Hey, what's up? It's your boy Rawk. I've been pretty busy as of late. You see, I picked up a new pastime recently, and it's been pretty fun. What is it, you may be asking? Well, allow me to introduce you to my good friend. Now I know what you're thinking. Rawk, how deep have you gone down the rabbit hole of being a hypocrite? Well, let's just put it this way. The other day, I criticised a Mario game. Then, I played through Ocarina of Time. Who knows what I'm capable of? Maybe one day soon I'll say something nice about Sonic Forces. Somebody please fucking save me! The Legend of Zelda is a series that I unfortunately haven't been all too invested in for most of my life. I of course knew about the series, I wasn't insane, but I'd never gotten my hands on one of the games to give the series a fair shot. That was until 2017 when The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild graced the Nintendo Switch at launch, and the Wii U at the polar opposite of its launch. Finally, I was able to give this series a go, and after doing so, Breath of the Wild became one of my favourite games of all time. That's all well and good, but it's no secret that Breath of the Wild is far from traditional, so I wanted to give the formula that the series was so well known for a shot. But I didn't know where to begin. Now, 3D Zelda is a lot different from 2D Zelda. Sure, you play as Link, explore Hyrule, solve puzzles and fight some form of Ganon in both, but one of them has an extra D. These two styles of Zelda are a lot more similar than people give them credit for. Now, I have had at least some experience with 2D Zelda. I bought and played the Link's Awakening remake in 2019, but you wouldn't know that because I'm still miserable, damn it. But Breath of the Wild is a 3D game, so I decided I needed to wet my whistle with another 3D Zelda. And given that I'm a bitch for chronology, and it's the highest rated game of all time, I decided that Ocarina of Time would be my first true Zelda experience. Later, I discovered that I owned the Zelda Collector's Edition for the GameCube, which contains a bunch of pre-Wind Waker Zeldas, and I made a promise to myself. I swore that I would beat Ocarina of Time. But then yikes. Well, hopefully that prediction was wrong, because I genuinely want to play this game. I'm finally open to trying new things. That's a rarity for me. I need to take advantage. Now, Ocarina of Time has a number of releases. Naturally, it was part of the Zelda Collector's Edition for the GameCube, but it also got a full-fledged remake on the 3DS. And despite the fact that I own both of these superior versions, I decided to hunt down an original cartridge so I could play this game on actively worse hardware. Alright, it's finally time to play the highest rated game of all time. It's time to play Ocarina of Time. Son of a bitch. I have not missed this place. So, turns out it was inevitable. I was destined to die before playing Ocarina of Time. Maybe this was just a lesson to not try new things. Well, I have nothing to do here. The Afterlife does not have a Switch dog, so I can't play Mario Golf. And I would play this Wii that's still here, but I don't want to be rude. Wait, if I'm dead, then why do I still exist? Isn't death usually a pretty permanent thing for most people? Unless, well, either playing Ocarina of Time is my unfinished business and I'm going to be roaming the earth until I do it, or I'm already in hell. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, released on the Nintendo 64 on December 11th, 1998 here in the UK. And this is a damn beloved game. Ocarina of Time is widely considered to be the greatest game of all time, receiving near perfect scores across the board at the time of its release, and garnering an even greater appreciation from fans as the series moved on from this monumental title. This game was the first ever 3D Zelda title, and would go on to set the groundwork for all following titles in the series, as well as inspiring a wealth of other games in the same vein. Ocarina of Time opens up on the Great Deku Tree, the protector of the Kokiri, the children of Kokiri Forest. After sensing a dark and evil presence lurking in Hyrule, he sends a fairy known as Navi to meet Link, the only boy in Kokiri Forest without his own guardian fairy. But that crushing reality isn't enough to stop him from getting his snooze on. Navi informs Link that the Great Deku Tree has requested to speak to him, and we waste no time in making our way over to him. On our way there, we find a sword and a shield, which will probably become important at some point, but what do I know? I'm no Zelda master. The Great Deku Tree has been cursed, and requests that Link finds a way to break this curse by entering the tree and defeating whatever lies inside. This is where we get into the gameplay of Ocarina of Time, as we now have most of the fundamental tools we'll be using throughout the entirety of the game, as well as the introduction of the game's primary structure. The gameplay of Ocarina of Time mostly focuses on using Link's sword and shield to defeat enemies, as well as interacting with the environment for a number of different purposes. Now, of course, the transition from 2D sword fighting to 3D sword fighting had the potential to be fairly tricky for players, as there's a lot more to consider in an open space, and the freedom of movement of both the player and the enemies could make aiming a miserably difficult task. The devs knew this would be the case, however, so they introduced the miracle that is Z-targeting. God, that feels dirty coming out of my very British mouth. This allows the camera to focus on nearby enemies and have each of your attacks hit them directly, without the need for you to manually line up Link before a swing of the sword. It also allows you to strafe around the enemy, meaning you can very easily dodge attacks that are headed your way, and can also allow you to reach an enemy's weak point faster. Ocarina of Time also makes use of a wide variety of items, such as bombs, the slingshot, Deku nuts, and many others, but we'll talk about them more in a bit. The gameplay here is absolutely fantastic. For the first ever 3D Zelda game, it's insane to me just how good this game feels to play. All of the abilities at your disposal feel pretty natural to use. The only slight gripe I have is having to remap which button items are on every now and then, but that's not a huge deal. Inside of the Deku Tree essentially acts as our first dungeon, and dungeons are at the forefront of Ocarina of Time. Each of the game's 9 main dungeons are structured fairly similarly. They see you solving puzzles, fighting enemies and bosses, and finding items to upgrade Link's abilities, and each one of them has their own thematic identity, and twists within the layout that relate to that theming. This opening dungeon sees us scaling the many layers of the tree, and primarily sees us using a burning stick to solve puzzles. Our first boss encounter is Queen Goma, and she introduces us to the main boss mechanic in this game: massive f***ing retinas. Most of the bosses in this game have fairly obvious weak points that you have to find a way to open up. A lot of the time this is done by exploiting certain attributes of their attacks in your favor, but other times it can simply be a game of waiting for an opening, and figuring out how to defeat any given boss is a really fun time. Upon freeing the Deku Tree of its curse, he tells us of the wicked man of the desert who cast this curse on him in the first place. This man is doing everything in his power to access the sacred realm, in order to get his hands on the divine relic which contains the essence of the gods: the Triforce. The Triforce was created by Din, the goddess of power, Pharaoh, the goddess of courage, and Nehru, the goddess of wisdom, and it's up to us to stop the evil desert man from getting his grubby hands all over it. The curse put on the Deku Tree was enough to kill him, and with his dying breath, he tells us to head to Hyrule Castle. On our way there, we meet with Saria, who gives us an ocarina as a parting gift. We break into the castle, say hello to Mario, and meet with the Princess of Hyrule, Princess Zelda. She tells us how to access the Sacred Realm, and she also tells us about a man called Ganondorf, who swears allegiance to the King of Hyrule, but Zelda can sense his evil intentions. The only way to access the Sacred Realm is with 3 spiritual stones, one of which we obtained from the Great Deku Tree, and the Ocarina of Time. Oh, come on! You mean that wasn't enough? We learn Zelda's lullaby on the Ocarina from Impa, and with a goal in mind, we head out into the Kingdom of Hyrule to put an end to Ganondorf's plan. Now, let's backtrack a little bit and talk about the Ocarina. Throughout the game, you'll learn songs that you can play on this thing at a moment's notice. Each of them have a different purpose, and are useful in different scenarios. Memorizing the songs is a really good time, and trying to figure out when exactly is the right time to use each of them is a blast. Each of the melodies you play are so damn iconic too, which is true of pretty much the entire soundtrack. This game's presentation is honestly fantastic, all things considered. Graphically, sure, it's a Nintendo 64 game. It's very limited in what it could be. I've seen more attractive grapes than this game, I get it.
To be fair, that's not much of a dig on Ocarina of Time. Name me something sexier than grapes.
But the sound design of this game boosts absolutely every other aspect to heights that they simply wouldn't have reached otherwise. The game's soundtrack can make you feel a range of emotions. There are naturally some happy, bubbly tracks in there that are earworms in the most literal sense.
Oh, get them out!
But there are also some pretty emotional tracks in there, which are a really nice change of pace. The music in the more serious cutscenes is some of my favourite though. Something about these scenes makes them feel ripped right out of an old-timey stage production, which kind of extends to the rest of the game, and invokes an intensely nostalgic feeling within me. It's really captivating, and that's something I always appreciate in a soundtrack.
Now, the main attraction of Ocarina of Time is the dungeons, which will probably take up most of your playtime, and while I would love to talk about each and every one of them in depth, I feel like most of the magic of this game comes from experiencing them yourself. Each of them are so interestingly designed and they're so fun to traverse, and they really are a true testament to how well designed this game is.
Seriously, every single dungeon in this game is designed in a way that perfectly balances their difficulty. What you have to do is never obvious or super in your face. They do require you to really think about all of your options and everything laid out in front of you, but they're never cryptic. There is always a way to figure out what needs to be done, and when you eventually have that aha moment, it's incredibly satisfying. A lot of the time, a dungeon will introduce a new item, and have a lot of the puzzles be centered around that item, which will then get you comfortable with using it, allowing it to become a permanent part of your arsenal after the dungeon is complete. And that is exactly how items should be handled in a game like this. I don't think there was any dungeon that I didn't enjoy. I know people like to rag on the water temple, and yeah, it's far from the best one in the game, but it's not that bad. It can just be a little tedious and monotonous and make me miserable. See, it's fine.
Most of the game's story comes from the major dungeons, and the most defining part of this story is the Master Sword. I never thought a sword would be able to tell such good bedtime stories.
The Temple of Time is at the root of this game's big unique story twist, as it houses the Door of Time, the only known entrance to the Sacred Realm, and the Master Sword. Upon pulling the Master Sword from its pedestal, Link falls into a 7-year-long slumber. Within that time, Ganondorf is able to enter the Sacred Realm. As we opened up the entrance after obtaining the aforementioned spiritual stones and playing the Song of Time on the Ocarina of Time. I love words. He obtains the Triforce and wreaks havoc in Hyrule. Upon waking up, Link is told that he is the hero of time, and it's his job to free the remaining 5 sages whose powers each lay in temples across Hyrule. We encounter a mysterious figure called Sheik, or as she's better known, the only reason people cared about Zelda in Melee. Sheik helps guide us to each of the temples, and after beating each of them, their sages awaken. After we awaken all of the sages, we head back to the Temple of Time to discover that Sheik was Zelda?
If I was a 90s kid, I would have shit my pants at that reveal, but joke's on me, I decided to wait until 2022 to play this game, so I shall remain full of shit.
We find out that the Triforce was split into 3 pieces, being the Triforce of Courage, which went to Link, the Triforce of Wisdom, which went to Zelda, and the Triforce of Power, which was taken by Ganondorf, who has just the best laugh. We take chase and make our way to the top of Ganon's castle, where the final fight takes place. This battle is incredible. It tests every single combat skill that you've gained throughout the course of the game. And it even has this chase sequence that's so intense and exhilarating, and god damn it, this game is amazing! The final form of Ganon is Dark Beast Ganon, and I'll be honest, this part of the battle gave me chills. Upon the defeat of the beast, the 6 sages of Hyrule seal Ganondorf away in the realm of evil, and peace returns to Hyrule. Zelda thanks Link for everything he did to help her kingdom, and in return, she sends him back in time, back to before his 7-year slumber, back to his childhood, to regain the time he sacrificed for the good of Hyrule. The credits roll and show the inhabitants of Hyrule living joyful lives after Ganon's reign came to an end. And the game ends with Zelda and Link meeting once more. This scene is so powerful in that it tells you nothing. There's no dialogue, there's no text, just Link and Zelda reuniting. But it forces your mind to wonder, does Link remember Zelda? Does he remember everything that happened before he was sent back to his own time? Or was his sacrifice just a speck of dust in another timeline?
The story of Ocarina of Time is fantastic. It takes the typical Zelda tropes found in the 2D games and refines them to near perfection. This was the perfect way for Zelda to be introduced to the third dimension, and honestly, there was so much more that I could have said about this story. There are so many elements at play, and it gets your mind racing, trying to piece together each and every little bit of information that you're given. If you let me, I could probably talk about this story for hours.
But I guess that sentiment is true for Ocarina of Time as a whole. There are so many elements that I could and would love to talk about for ages, but the magic lies in seeing them play out for yourself and being able to experience them with your own eyes. Like the locales of this game, they all feel so damn alive. Each and every location is bustling with characters that all have their own personalities and things to say, and each and every one of them is bursting with charm. And the locations themselves are so beautifully designed. There's an underlying sense of tranquility that permeates throughout the entirety of the experience. Even when the world is in ruin at the hands of Ganon, the feelings that this game elicit are so empowering, and yet, it's all achieved so seamlessly.
Ocarina of Time is a fantastic game. I don't think it's my favourite of all time, and I'll be honest, I've played a lot of games that eclipse it in many aspects. But really, that doesn't matter. Ocarina of Time is still an experience that stands toe-to-toe with games that released decades after it did, and a lot of those games, they have Ocarina of Time as their primary inspiration. I am so glad that I decided to give this game a go, because it's such a special one, and I honestly think I'm gonna cherish this game for years to come. Uh-oh. Did I do something wrong? Oh my god, I'm back! Learning to love Ocarina of Time truly was the antidote! My death is cured! What do you have to say about that, Mr. Tombstone? My soul will never find peace.